Hello, friends. Tonight, forget Michelin stars and those complicated TikTok cooking hacks. We're diving face first into the sticky, crumbly, utterly irresistible world of medieval junk food. You're about to stroll cobblestone streets with a pouch full of greasy coins, dodging chamber pots overhead, just to score a bite of something fried, honeyed, or, let's be honest, mysteriously gray. Think knights with mustard stains, peasants snacking on things your doctor would faint over, and vendors hawking their wares with all the subtlety of a used chariot salesman. Did you know that medieval England's favorite street snack was literally called pig's trotter pie? You don't want to know what was inside. And yes, even monks snuck out for a cheeky fritter or two, chanting ora et labora. Pray and eat, if you ask me. So before we open this barrel of crispy curiosities, don't forget to like, subscribe, and smash that bell if you want more late-night time travel munchies. If you're tuning in from Hanoi at midnight or New York City at 1 o'clock a.m., drop a comment. I want to know who's snacking on Cheetos while listening to stories about mutton pies. Go ahead, turn the lights down, pour yourself something questionable, and get comfy. Join me tonight. Before you find yourself drooling on your pillow, let medieval junk food lead you on a midnight snack raid across the centuries. The air is just turning gold, the city not quite awake, and you're already up, squinting through a half-laced tunic, following your nose towards something that's equal parts comfort and chaos. The stalls along the main street are setting up, their owners barking, cackling, and occasionally flinging a cabbage leaf at a lazy apprentice. It's the medieval equivalent of your local food court, minus the health inspectors and with a few more wandering pigs. A woman in a faded wimple waves you closer, brandishing a tray piled high with pies. Not just any pies. These are pig's trotter pies, which sound exactly as they are. The crust is rough and pockmarked, dusted with a little flour and a lot of yesterday's regrets. You fumble a penny out of your purse and she slides the warm, misshapen package into your hand. The weight alone could stun a pigeon. You bite in and the world tilts. Crisp, slightly burnt pastry flakes stick to your lips. Inside, the meat is fatty, gelatinous, and packed with herbs that don't quite hide the barnyard aroma. Don't ask too many questions about where the trotter went or why this pie's gravy glistens green at the edge. In medieval times, the best food often came with a disclaimer. Eat at your own risk, blessed by St. Anthony's pig. Even the local bailiff nibbles one with suspicion, chewing thoughtfully as if bracing for a vision or indigestion. Across the square, church bells clatter, their clang as insistent as a street vendor on payday. You lean against a doorway, savoring the sensation of hot grease pooling in your palm and the salty crunch giving way to chewy bits that taste suspiciously like cartilage. There's comfort in the ritual, though. Morning pies for the workers, a start as ancient as hunger. Pies like these weren't just for breakfast either. Knights heading out on campaigns stuffed a few into saddlebags. Pilgrims took them on the long road to Canterbury, convinced that a bite of pork and pastry could ward off bandits, or at least distract them. The secret ingredient? Desperation, mostly, and a dash of medieval optimism. You glance around. A boy licks gravy from his sleeve, a baker flicks flour from his beard, a stray dog noses the gutter for crumbs. Everyone is chasing the next bite, the next tiny comfort in a world that's mostly muddy boots and missed chances. Pig's trotter pie, not glamorous, but it gets you moving. Someone shouts, time to move along. You toss the last flaky bit to the dog, who wolfs it down and looks up, hopeful. The city is waking, and so are you, belly full, fingers greasy, eyes ready for whatever mischief comes next. A hush falls as the sun crests the rooftops, gilding the crumbs at your feet. You take a breath, taste the morning on your tongue. You step out of the shadowy alleyway, past the pig's trotter pie lady, who, by the way, is already counting coins like she's auditioning for Medieval Dragon's Den, and head straight into the chaos of the market. Here the air is thick with the kind of smells that make your mouth water and your eyebrows lift in suspicion all at the same time. There's a sweet tang from apples roasting somewhere, the sharp nose tickle of fresh manure, thanks City Council, and the unmistakable mouth-punching aroma of meat charring on open coals. Now let's not get ahead of ourselves. Meat on a stick is a phrase that, in modern times, conjures thoughts of kebabs, yakitori, maybe even the occasional corn dog if you're feeling especially decadent. In the medieval city, though, you're rolling the dice every time you hand over a coin. The rules? Simple. You get a stick, there's meat, allegedly, and you don't ask follow-up questions. If you want to be fancy, say it in Latin, carne in ligno, but that doesn't make it any less suspicious. A man in a grubby apron, face red as a turnip, waves you over. He's got a brazier balanced on an old wine barrel, the smoke rising in spirals that promise both culinary pleasure and tomorrow's indigestion. "Best bits in town," he boasts, voice cracking like a rooster at dawn. You look at the sticks. They're charred at the tips, some curling with little ribbons of fat, others boasting globs of something chewy. The meat's identity is between you and St. Anthony, patron of swineherds and, you suspect, undercover diners everywhere. You hand over a battered coin, a farthing maybe, or something that once was, and the man slaps a stick in your palm. It's hot, the wood rough under your fingers, the meat spitting little beads of grease as you turn it. The vendor grins. "Eat it quick before the bishop walks by," he whispers, as if the church has banned fun along with dancing. First bite. The outside is crisp, almost burnt, with a spicy crust that numbs your lips. There's pepper, sure, and maybe a bit of mustard seed, but mostly it's the taste of fire, fat, and something you're hoping is rabbit. Medieval cooks, you'll find, were experts at making questionable ingredients taste just shy of delicious, using whatever was at hand, whether it once squeaked, squawked, or oinked. You chew, savor, and then, with a shrug, you commit. It's not bad. In fact, it's the kind of snack that would win any tavern's happy hour, if only for the gamble. Next to you, a wiry kid with hay in his hair is already on his third stick. He's gnawing like a terrier, grinning through blackened teeth. "Mum says it's better than last year," he cackles. "Less gristle." You nod like you agree, because really, what's the alternative? Some days the meat is bird, sparrow, pigeon, or on a lucky day, chicken. Other times it's mutton or pork, sometimes long pig. Don't ask, don't tell. But if you're here for lunch, you're not picky. Even the city's finest, mayors, monks, the odd bard with a lute and a pocket full of puns, can be found here, chewing thoughtfully and pretending not to notice the vendor's hands are the exact same color as the coals. The scene around you is pure medieval theater. Housewives haggle for an extra bit of fat, boys trade insults in 3 different dialects, and somewhere nearby, a town crier is practicing his voice for the lost goat announcement. The meat sizzles and pops, little droplets of juice hissing into the flames. The vendor turns the sticks with a flourish, like he's performing for royalty, or at least a crowd desperate for distraction. "Try the sauce," he shouts, brandishing a clay pot with all the drama of a knight unsheathing Excalibur. The sauce, for the record, is probably half mustard, half mystery, and all sinus-clearing fire. You dunk your stick, savor the burn, and immediately sneeze so violently that 3 pigeons flee the scene. It's not just about flavor, though. Eating in the market is a sport, a spectacle and sometimes a social experiment gone awry. You lock eyes with a passing monk who looks momentarily scandalized, then shrugs and asks for a stick. Saints above, even the holiest crave something roasted and possibly regrettable. Medieval food rules were flexible after all, especially when the bishop wasn't looking. There's a certain camaraderie in munching mystery meat together, like you're all in on a secret the cooks will never reveal. Suddenly, a troop of soldiers tramps through, armor clanking and faces set in "I dare you to laugh" lines. One peels off, slaps a coin on the barrel, and bites a stick clean in half. The vendor beams. "Good for the nerves before battle," he declares, which is true, assuming your biggest enemy is salmonella. You turn to check the time, then remember. Clocks are for monasteries and people with way more money than you. Here you measure the day by the angle of sunlight and the length of your shadow on the mud. The market is reaching its midday fever. Voices rise, boots stomp, laughter spills into every nook. A lute twangs somewhere, off-key but enthusiastic, and the smell of roasting meat, spiced and primal, fills every corner of your mind. Back to your stick. There's still one more bite hanging there like the final question on an exam. Do you risk it? Of course you do. You chew, the texture both tender and mysterious, like a confession made in candlelight. The flavors linger, smoke, salt, a whisper of sage, and the echo of something wild. Maybe rabbit, maybe squirrel, maybe, if you believe the rumors, the last honest politician in town. Just kidding, those went extinct long ago. As you finish, the vendor winks, tossing another handful of mystery meat onto the coals. "Come back for supper," he calls. "It's better after dark." Sure it is. You'll return, because that's what this market is for. A place to gamble with your taste buds, to laugh at the absurdity of it all, and to bond over sticks of something deliciously questionable. You wipe your fingers on your tunic, feeling the sticky residue of rendered fat, the happy burn of mustard still tickling your tongue. The market noise dips for a moment, a hush, a breath, then rises again, relentless and alive. You take another step forward, ready for whatever oddity comes next. You leave the raucous heart of the market behind, wiping the last hint of roasted mystery from your lips, and follow the church bell's lazy chime up a winding lane paved with stones polished by centuries of muddy boots and anxious wedding parties. Here, the world slows. The shadows cool the air, and the familiar clatter of vendors and minstrels fades, replaced by bird song and the distant rustle of cassocks. This is the churchyard, that strange borderland where the sacred and the profane meet. Though if you listen closely, the profane is always louder around noon, especially on feast days. Right on cue, you catch the unmistakable scent of caramelizing sugar. Sweet, warm, with a faint whiff of burnt promise. You follow your nose, and honestly, who wouldn't, toward a rickety wooden stall nestled under the ancient yew, guarded by a gaggle of nuns who are, in all likelihood, there to supervise rather than sample. At the center of the crowd, a barrel-chested woman with arms like hams, her apron dusted with flour, her smile pure mischief. She's known as Auntie Magda, and if you believe half the tales, she once baked a honey cake so good that a bishop confessed his sins twice, just to get another slice. On her table sits a pyramid of golden brown cakes, each one small enough to vanish in a couple of bites, but sticky enough to leave you marked for hours. "Try one, dearie," Magda coos, sliding a cake your way. "Baked just this morning, may Saint Bridget bless my oven and Saint Lawrence keep his nose out of my honey jar." You reach for it, your fingers immediately sinking into the soft, still warm dough, feeling the honey ooze up and threaten your sleeve. A bee hovers nearby, drawn by the scent. or perhaps by Magda's reputation for feeding stray animals anything that doesn't run away fast enough. You take a bite, and the world goes sweet. The crust is just crisp enough to crackle between your teeth, the center dense and chewy, flavored with something richer than honey alone. There's spice here too, maybe cinnamon, maybe a touch of pepper, maybe something Magda won't admit to unless you slip her a silver coin. Sugar, precious as gold in these parts, is still a luxury. Honey is the true medieval king of sweeteners, dripping from every comb, carrying the memory of 1,000 wildflowers, and just a hint of mischief. Around you, the churchyard hums with small dramas. A pair of choir boys stage a mock sword fight with stale breadsticks. A merchant's wife clucks her tongue at a cluster of beggar children, and the local priest sweeps past, trying to look disapproving but not quite pulling it off. His teeth, after all, are suspiciously sticky. On holy days, the line for Magda's cakes can wrap around the gravestones, each person pretending they're buying for the children, even if no child gets so much as a crumb. The cakes themselves are a marvel of medieval resourcefulness. Grain, coarse, sometimes a bit weevily, but wholesome. Eggs, if you're lucky. Butter, for the wealthy. But honey is everywhere, so the cakes are glazed thick, dripping, and, in some years, stretched with a sly splash of watered-down ale. Some days, Magda experiments with ground almonds or a pinch of ginger if the spice merchant's feeling generous. But always, there's the honey, a flavor strong enough to hush the most persistent hunger, at least for a little while. You bite again, closing your eyes as the sweetness melts across your tongue. There's laughter all around, the gentle babble of neighbors sharing news, gossiping and swapping stories of saints and sinners, sometimes both in the same breath. The bees circle lazily, and a breeze lifts the sweet scent toward the cloister, where a monk peeks out like a guilty child. You catch his eye, he winks, tugs his hood down, and hurries back inside, cake in hand. As far as medieval vices go, honey cakes are both the safest and the stickiest. Auntie Magda catches you licking your fingers and grins wider. Best wash up before Mass, love, or Father John'll know exactly who's been raiding the beehives. She isn't wrong. In a world where dinner is often a gray bowl of pottage, these cakes are a slice of heaven, and everyone knows it. Even the gravestones seem to lean closer, as if hoping to catch a crumb or two. The cakes vanish, one by one, into the hands of townsfolk who can't resist, no matter how many sermons warn against gluttony. Fun fact: a few bishops reportedly delivered entire homilies on the dangers of honeyed temptation, then hurried outside to buy 2 for the road. The church bell tolls, calling the faithful inside. For a moment the churchyard quiets, the bees claim what's left, and Magda waves her last cakes at a couple of stragglers. You lick a final drop of honey from your palm, sunlight warm on your face. This is more than dessert. It's a ritual, a tiny rebellion, a brief, sticky truce between the demands of heaven and the cravings of earth. You stroll away, savoring the aftertaste, the gentle ache in your jaw from the richness, the memory of sweetness clinging to your fingers. Behind you the laughter continues, the nuns scold the choir boys, and Magda sets about cleaning her trays, already plotting the next batch. For a heartbeat, all is calm. The world holds its breath and the air is thick with the promise of another treat just around the corner. You leave behind the honeyed laughter of the churchyard, sticky fingers wiped half-heartedly on your sleeve, and wander down the winding lane where the sun only dares poke through in golden threads. There's a sudden coolness, a hush, a shift from the sweetness of cakes to something tangier, sharper, an old alley with a secret. You know that feeling, when your nose leads and your reason follows several paces behind. That's how you end up here, before the battered wooden cart of the cheese curd seller, who, by local legend, hasn't smiled since the last feast day, and who knows more secrets than the bishop's confessor.
The first thing that hits you isn't the sight, but the smell. It's strong, bold, and, to be honest, a little bit illegal if you're not prepared. Medieval cheese is no dainty affair. It's the kind of aroma that walks a step ahead, clearing the crowd, curling around your ears and whispering, "Only the brave dare taste." But once you've braved the first whiff, there's something oddly inviting, like a challenge or a dare from a friend who never learned his lesson. The cart itself is an artifact of another age, battered and groaning beneath rounds of cheese in every possible shade. Pale gold, creamy white, sometimes streaked with something blue that may or may not be intentional. Today, however, it's not the wheels or blocks you're after, but the fresh cheese curds piled high in a basket lined with an old linen cloth. These are not your elegant pressed cheeses worthy of a lord's table. No, curds are the snack of the masses, quick, crumbly, unpretentious, and available for a few coppers, provided you don't ask where the milk came from. "Curds?" the vendor grunts, eyeing you with a gaze that could sour milk. You nod, holding out your hand. No one ever asks for weight or measurement. You get what fits in your palm, and that's that. "No questions," he adds, sliding a scoop into your outstretched hand. The curds are soft, moist, cool to the touch, and still warm from the morning's churning in the dairy on the edge of town. You pop a piece in your mouth, bracing for anything. The flavor bursts, tangy, fresh, with a milky richness that coats your tongue, chased by a faint, salty bite. It's humble, but there's magic in simplicity. These curds squeak between your teeth, a small, private concert just for you. If you're lucky, there's a hint of wild herbs, the dairy-maid secret perhaps, or just evidence of a goat with adventurous tastes. As you chew, the world of medieval cheese unfolds. In this era, cheese is both a staple and a survival tool, a way to turn perishable milk into something that could last a week, or in the case of the oldest, hardiest cheeses, a year or more. But curds? Curds are fleeting, a taste of the present moment, meant to be eaten before the sun sets or they turn rubbery. They are the taste of the countryside brought to the city, a gentle reminder that somewhere, not far beyond the walls, cows are grazing and milkmaids are singing rude songs to each other across the hedges. You drift into a daydream, imagining the journey these curds took. Milk poured warm from the morning's milking, ladled into a wooden vat, stirred with a hazel branch while rennet, sourced from a calf's stomach because medieval cuisine is nothing if not inventive, works its alchemy. Within an hour or two, the milk splits, the curds rise, the whey drains away, and what's left is scooped into cloth and pressed into your hand with all the fanfare of a medieval handshake. A girl tugs at your sleeve, her face smeared with something unidentifiable. "Salt?" she asks, waving a small wooden spoon. You nod, and she sprinkles a few rough grains onto your curds. Now the flavors snap, tart, briny, alive. A chorus of local children dart past, each clutching their own handful, giggling and jostling for the next pinch. This is the medieval version of after-school snacks, though you suspect none of their parents will ever admit it. Cheese curds are a democratic delight. Lords may prefer their wheels of aged cheddar, but the people crave what's fresh and honest. No aging, no fancy spices, just the simple pleasure of what the cow, or the goat, or even the occasional sheep gives each morning. You see an old woman sitting on a step, munching curds and sharing gossip with the man whose nose has known too many winters. You spot a cluster of apprentices trading bites,
wagering over whose curds are the freshest. There's even a traveling friar, robes dusty, eyes bright, who accepts a handful and raises them to the sky. For the glory of the saints and the nourishment of the soul, he proclaims, before stuffing his mouth and winking at you. It's not always so peaceful, though. Medieval cities are noisy, chaotic, and occasionally unkind. A young boy darts by, snatching a curd from your hand before you can react, his grin wide, his laughter even wider. You chase, half-hearted, but he's gone, lost in the swirl of bakers, beggars, and butchers. No matter, the vendor, grumbling, drops another curd into your palm. On the house, he mutters. Next time, don't let the little rats get so close. You thank him, savoring the last bite. Cheese curds are a taste of risk and reward. Freshness balanced on the edge of spoilage, a treat best enjoyed with friends, or at least not stolen by enemies. They are fleeting, impermanent, and all the more precious for it. As you finish, you wipe your hand, the tang of milk lingering on your breath, and glance back at the vendor, who is already deep in debate with a customer about the merits of goat versus cow. The answer, as always, is no questions. The alley hums with quiet satisfaction. Somewhere a bell tolls, calling you forward to whatever snack or scandal waits around the next corner. For now, you're content, mouth tingling, stomach pleased, mind drifting. You take a breath, savor the peace, and step into the sunlight. You haven't made it 10 steps before your nose catches a new scent, something both savory and slippery, tangy yet briny, a kind of edible puzzle that tugs you down toward the bustling riverbank. If the city market is a stage for the greatest hits of medieval snacking, the river is the backstage pass, the place where the ordinary folk gather after prayers and plowing, drawn by hunger and hope, and the faint promise of something actually filling. The air hums with a chorus of gulls squabbling overhead and the splash of oars in the shallows. Here, the stalls lean close together like gossips sharing secrets, all their surfaces sticky with flour, splattered gravy, and, today, an unholy alliance of mud and fish scales. Your shoes slip a little on the flagstones, but you push on, because the crowd is thickest at one battered table where a baker with forearms like tree trunks wields a knife, a pie, and an attitude that could stop a tax collector. You know the legend, eel pie, the working man's lunch, the snack of saints and sinners, and the reason that somewhere in London, there's probably a statue to the humble eel if you look hard enough. Don't look. The eels are better left to legend. Hot pies, fresh pies, eel as you like, the baker booms, slapping another glistening round onto the board. The pastry is golden, shiny with a quick brush of egg, bubbling at the edge with the promise of whatever lurks inside. You pay up, a copper or two, nothing more, and certainly less than you'd pay for beef or mutton, and the baker cracks the crust with a practiced hand, steam pouring out with the unmistakable scent of the river. Earthy, sweet, just a little bit mysterious. Inside, the filling glistens, cubes of eel tangled with onions, speckled with parsley, bathed in a rich, peppery gravy. Eel was the chicken nugget of medieval Europe, ubiquitous, cheap, and slippery enough to survive in every river, pond, and city moat from Kent to Calais. Even monks, strict vegetarians on paper, bent the rules for eel, conveniently classifying them as fish for Lent, a tradition winked at by every hungry friar with gravy on his lips. Your first bite is an act of trust. The crust is flaky, with the kind of chew that hints at animal fat in the dough. Don't ask, don't tell, just be grateful for the flavor. The eel is both firm and tender, a meatier bite than fish, with a hint of smoke and a backbone of sweet river mud, softened by the onions and that herby hit of green. You can't help but close your eyes, blocking out the river's chaos, letting the taste carry you downstream. There's a kind of music to eating eel pie, fork tapping against tin,
laughter rising from the laborers taking a rare midday break, the odd hiccup from a customer who's had a little too much ale. Pies disappear as fast as the baker can cut them. A boy in a tunic 2 sizes too large hovers near the table, eyes wide, nose twitching. The baker winks and slips him a crust. No eel, just the golden shell. The boy beams. For many, the pastry is treat enough. You overhear the tales. One fisherman claims he caught an eel longer than a monk's sermon. Another swears the best ones are found where the moonlight hits the weir. Some say the city's river rats fear the eels, while others insist the eels are the true lords of the water. Superstitions abound. Eels ward off the plague if you don't mind the taste. Ensure good luck in marriage if you eat one on the wedding night, and can even help you win at dice. If you slip an eel bone in your shoe, please don't try this at home. Eel pie, though, is more than food. It's community, it's ritual, it's a small miracle served in a crusty shell. On feast days, pies sell by the 100. On lean days, they're stretched with barley or turnip. Recipes are closely guarded secrets. One baker's pie is peppery, another's sweet with nutmeg, a third spiked with cider or ale. Even the shape is debated. Round for luck, oval for speed, square for those who like their snacks with corners. And don't trust a pie with too many corners. That's where the extra crust hides the lack of filling. You lean against the riverside, pie in hand, letting the gravy dribble down your chin. The breeze brings a spray of water, and you watch as a couple of young men try their luck with nets. In the background, a sharp-eyed woman sells pickles to cut the richness, a slice of sour apple or turnip to refresh the palate between bites. Somewhere, a bard strums a lute, singing a song so old it's half laughter and half memory. If you listen closely, the refrain is about love, luck, and, of course, eels. The pies vanish quickly, the table soon down to crumbs. You toss the last bit to a hopeful dog who devours it with the skill of a veteran scavenger. The baker wipes his hands, looks up at the clouds, and announces, "That's the lot. Next catch. Come back at vespers." Groans, laughter, and a few half-hearted complaints ripple through the crowd, but everyone knows, tomorrow or the day after, they'll be back for more. Eel pie is the taste of now, the comfort that tomorrow might bring the same. You wander from the river, the briny taste lingering, the warmth of the pie still in your hands, the music of the market echoing in your head. There's a kind of hush as you step back into the flow of the city, belly full, heart lighter, eyes hungry for the next adventure. And the river? It keeps flowing, eels and all, as eternal as hunger itself. The city river curves away behind you, the taste of eel pie a happy echo on your tongue, and suddenly your senses are pulled in a new direction, toward the raucous sound of laughter, wooden mugs clacking, and the unmistakable aroma of, well, let's just call it liquid courage. You follow your nose through a thicket of gossip, past 2 old men arguing about the exact year King Edward lost his last tooth and his last war, and find yourself swept up in a tide of merrymakers. You've stumbled into the territory of the alewives, the true queens of medieval refreshment. No matter what the history books say, in these streets, ale is more than a drink. It's a lifeline. Water? Questionable, unless you like your beverage with a side of dysentery. Wine? Imported, expensive, and best left for bishops and the kind of merchants who can afford buttons on both sleeves. But ale? Ale is for everyone. Stewards and servants, nuns and ne'er-do-wells, the honest, the dishonest, and the honestly dishonest. If you're alive and thirsty, ale is your answer. And behind almost every frothing mug is an alewife. aproned, red-faced, hands on hips, and eyes sharp enough to spot a counterfeit coin in a thunderstorm. They run the city's best and worst taverns with a mix of wit, muscle, and a sixth sense for trouble. Some folks say alewives can predict rain by the way their barrels swell or tell fortunes from the foam atop a well-poured pint. Whether that's true or just the ale talking, you're about to find out. You duck into a half-timbered alehouse, its door swinging on rusty hinges, the air within thick with warmth and a fog of malty sweetness. The floorboards creak with every footstep, and the ceiling is hung with dried herbs, last year's garlands, and a suspiciously large frying pan. In the corner, two minstrels are tuning up for a ballad about unrequited love, or possibly unrequited debt, and in the center a long table sags under the weight of mugs, some empty, some in the dangerous process of becoming empty. The alewife herself, let's call her Mistress Joan, spots you at the door and waves a ladle with all the authority of a field marshal. "Come in, traveler. Fresh ale straight from the barrel. None of that thin stuff the monks sell to sinners." You squeeze between a pair of burly stonemasons and hand over a copper. In exchange, you get a wooden mug filled to the brim, foam swirling and shimmering with the kind of golden promise only yeast can deliver. You take a sip, and it's magic. Not the fizzy, bitter stuff of modern bars, but a heady, almost bready concoction, sweet with malt, and barely a hint of hops. If any, hops are still the talk of the continent, not the staple of every brew. There's a wildness to it, a reminder that every barrel is its own adventure. One batch might taste of apples and sunshine, another of hay and regret. If you're lucky, today's is somewhere in the middle. It's cool and rich, comforting as a fresh loaf, with enough kick to melt away the aches of a long day's labor, or at least dull the memory of stepping in something unpleasant on the way here. Ale isn't just for drinking either. Here it's breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Even children get small ale, weaker but safer than the water running in the street. The recipe? Every alewife has her own secret. Barley, oats, sometimes wheat if the harvest was kind. Add water, yeast, maybe a handful of herbs or the odd crabapple, and let time, and the right dose of luck, do the rest. Some nights, Mistress Joan stirs her barrels with a stick handed down from her great-aunt, said to bring good head, meaning foam, but you're free to interpret as you like. The tavern is a living, breathing beast. You hear jokes in 4 dialects, a game of dice rattling in the corner, a merchant singing slightly off-key, and above it all, the steady thud of Joan's ladle as she doles out seconds. "Mind your head," she warns a wobbly farmer who tries to sit on a bench already occupied by a chicken. The chicken wins. A baby cries. Someone toasts to St. Arnold, patron of hop lovers and hangovers, and a trio of friars make suspiciously quick work of a pitcher, eyes darting toward the door. You sip, soak up the chaos, and notice the walls plastered with tokens. A crumpled saint's medal, a dried sprig of rosemary, a small wooden shoe. Each is a thank you for a night's shelter, a healed heartbreak, or a loan of 2 pennies when the crop failed. Alehouses are part bank, part post office, and all heart. If news is spreading in town, it's here first, poured out between sips and sealed with a nod. Alewives, though, are the real secret ingredient. They brew with muscle and memory, guarding their yeast like dragon's gold and judging patrons with a glance. Some are rumored to have tempers fiercer than the sheriff's hounds. Others are soft with laughter, slipping extra crusts to hungry children and a wink to the good-for-nothings. But all know their customers' secrets, their debts, their favorite stories, and their weakest excuses for running a tab. Outside, the day is slipping by, but within, time flows in alehouse hours. You lose count of your sips. The fire in the hearth crackles. The minstrels strike up a tune about a wayward knight and his lost pants. And for a moment, the world shrinks to this warm, noisy room and the steady comfort of ale. Eventually, you rise, head pleasantly light, cheeks flushed, spirit fortified for the next round of whatever the medieval city throws your way. Mistress Joan calls after you. Come back soon. The next batch is stronger, or maybe it's just the company. You grin, promise you will, and step out into the fading sun, the echoes of laughter and ale following you down the lane. For a moment, everything is mellow, golden, and still. You pause, breathe, and move on. You drift from the rowdy warmth of the alehouse, face pleasantly flushed, and senses just a bit fuzzier around the edges, right into the midday bustle. There's a sharper wind now, the sort that cuts straight through your tunic and chivies your appetite out of hiding again. Your feet carry you, almost of their own accord, back toward the market's heart. Only this time the aromas are bolder, heartier, thick with meat and pepper and the universal promise of something rich enough to stick to your ribs. That's when you see it, the pasty cart, surrounded by a hungry horde and presided over by a baker whose arms and belly both strain the limits of his flour-dusted apron. His name, if you believe the rumors, and you really should, is Goodwife Arlo, and her pasties are as famous for their size as for the stories told about them. Hot mutton, extra gravy, she bellows, slapping another golden triangle onto her board. None of that dry crust nonsense. Bite into mine and you'll be wearing the sauce home. You elbow in, heart pounding with anticipation, and finally wedge your way to the front. The pasties are enormous, crusts folded like armored shields, steam curling from tiny vents on top. You hand over a coin, get a nod, and she slides a pasty into your hand. It's warm, heavy, and leaks a bit from the corner, promising mischief. One bite and oh, saints above, your mouth is filled with tender mutton, carrots, onions, and a lake of thick, peppery gravy that escapes the moment you dare tilt the pastry. The crust is crisp and flaky, with just enough chew to fight back, and each mouthful delivers a different surprise. A sliver of turnip, a tangy hint of ale, a stubborn bit of fat you chew like a prize. If you're not careful, you'll dribble gravy down your chin, rite of passage for all true market goers. You glance around and see you're not alone. Everyone's sporting a stain or two, the badge of the well-fed. Even the daintiest ladies, tucked behind handkerchiefs, have surrendered to the joy of a hot, messy pasty. You join the chorus of delighted sighs and hearty chewing, letting the world narrow to crust and filling, spice and warmth. Pasties like these are more than a snack. They're a meal wrapped for the road, the original fast food for farmers, smiths, wandering minstrels, and anyone too impatient to sit still at a table. The filling changes with the season: mutton in spring, beef if you're lucky, root vegetables and wild garlic for the frugal times, and sometimes a secret blend of whatever needed using up before it walked away on its own. You look up and catch Goodwife Arlo's eye. Want more gravy? She asks, raising a battered jug with a sly wink. You nod. Who wouldn't? And she pours a generous dollop straight into the pastry's open seam. It soaks the crust, seeps into the meat, and all but sings on your tongue. If you're wise, you'll angle your hand to catch the runoff. If not, your sleeve gets baptized. No matter. As the proverb goes, a well-fed sleeve is a happy sleeve. Or maybe you just made that up. Medieval sayings are flexible, especially after ale. Pasties, you discover, are a social glue. A trio of apprentices swap bites and boasts, whose mother's crust is the flakiest, whose father can eat 3 in a row without stopping for breath.
A merchant's son tries to impress a girl by juggling 2 pasties. He drops one, the dog claims it, and the crowd erupts in laughter. Even the city guard, lurking at the edge with a suspicious eye, gives in to the scent and snags one on his patrol. If you squint, you might spot a friar lurking behind a barrel, muttering prayers and cramming pasty into his cheek like a guilty squirrel. This isn't just food. It's ritual and reward, comfort and celebration. The best pasties travel with you, packed in a cloth for tomorrow's plowing, shared on a church outing, or snuck into the corner of a dim-lit inn. If you're really in a hurry, you eat as you walk, leaving a trail of crumbs for the grateful pigeons. But beware, not all pasties are created equal. Arlo's are legendary, but a few unlucky souls wander off with dry crusts or fillings so bland you'd swear they were invented to punish gluttony. The market's unspoken rule: judge by the line. Where the crowd is thickest, the gravy is deepest. You savor the final bite, the last explosion of spice and savory warmth. A gust of wind threatens to snatch your wrapper, but you catch it and wipe your lips with a flourish, feeling oddly triumphant. Around you, the world spins on, a marketplace of haggling, laughter, small miseries, and tiny victories, all stitched together by the simple joy of hot food in cold hands. You lean back, hands warm, belly content, the chaos of the city briefly kept at bay by pastry and pepper and the memory of Goodwife Arlo's knowing wink. For a moment, the world feels both enormous and close, a place where anyone with a coin and an appetite belongs. You take a breath, a hush, the tang of gravy and a flicker of joy. The market's savory riot gradually fades behind you, replaced by something softer, gentler bells, the lazy flutter of banners, and the faint, ever-present promise of something sweet and exotic. Your tongue is still tingling from pepper and gravy, so naturally you crave a drink. Not the sharp punch of ale, not the suspicious murk of river water, but something delicate, smooth, and strange. And in this curious, hungry city, that can mean only one thing. You are on the hunt for almond milk, the medieval drink that made even the dullest bread seem like a banquet, and could, if you believe the poets, heal heartbreaks, banish the blues, and, occasionally, cause a minor scandal at Lent. You drift toward the posher end of the square, where the air smells of fresh linen and nervous optimism. There, beneath a painted canopy, a vendor ladles a pale golden liquid into wooden cups. It looks almost like liquid sunlight, the surface dancing with a faint shimmer. Could that be saffron floating in golden threads? And the scent is unlike anything else. Floral, faintly nutty, with a hint of the spice that once made kings bankrupt and sailors cross the known world just for a pinch. The vendor, a wiry fellow with the kind of mustache that suggests he's tasted every recipe in the county, grins when you approach. Almond milk, traveler, with a dash of saffron for luck and a drop of rose water for dreams. His accent is thick, his apron spotless, and his eyes twinkle with the shared knowledge that you're about to taste the medieval equivalent of a celebrity-endorsed smoothie, except here, the only influencer is the local apothecary, and the only hashtag is #blessed. You nod, slide him a coin, a little pricier than you'd hoped, but saffron doesn't grow on trees, and he hands over the cup. You raise it, inhale. The smell is lush, almond, sweet cream, the faintest touch of honey, and an undertone of mystery that's probably half imagination, half imported spice. You sip, and for a second, the world narrows to pure sensation. It's cool and silky, richer than water, lighter than milk, with a flavor both familiar and utterly new. There's a sweetness, subtle, not cloying, and a glow from the saffron, which leaves a faint gold mustache above your lip. You try to wipe it off, but the color lingers, like all the best secrets.
There's also a gentle heat from something else, maybe a whisper of ginger, maybe just the warmth of the market sun. Almond milk is a marvel, a triumph of medieval culinary engineering. In a world where cows are precious, goats are moody, and the word lactose hasn't even been invented, this drink is a solution and a luxury rolled into one. Cooks pound almonds with water, strain the pulp through linen, and, if they're feeling flush, add honey, spices, and a dash of rose water to coax out every ounce of flavor. It's the beverage of choice for fasting days, when no animal milk really means no fun, and the star ingredient in countless feasts, sauces, and midnight snacks. Of course, almond milk is also the drink of the anxious, the ill, and the heartbreakingly hopeful. Grandmothers swear by it for weak children. Young lovers slip each other sips in the shadow of the abbey walls. Even monks whose vows supposedly ban all pleasure are found lurking near the almond vendor with guilty faces and lips stained gold. You notice a trio of ladies in waiting, each holding a cup, gossiping with the ferocity of cats over a cream bowl. "Did you hear about Sir Roderick?" one whispers. "He spilled almond milk on the bishop's new shoes." Their laughter rings like bells, mixing with the hum of bees in the nearby herb garden. A passing merchant, bedecked in so much saffron-colored silk you wonder if he's trying to advertise, orders a double. The vendor obliges, sprinkling a little extra spice on top, because in the medieval world, a little flash goes a long way. You savor another mouthful, let the taste linger, and reflect on all the stories swirling in this golden drink. Saffron, the world's most extravagant spice, is said to bring courage and vitality, or, if you believe old wives' tales, slightly unfortunate dreams involving dancing goats. Almonds, carried from distant lands, are as much status symbol as sustenance. Rosewater, distilled in secret by apothecaries and monks, carries the faint memory of a summer you can't quite recall. And altogether, these ingredients form a beverage that is at once both everywhere and precious, common enough for the market, rare enough to make the average peasant sigh with envy. There's something dreamlike about it all. The warm gold of the afternoon, the soft clink of wooden cups, the distant drone of a lute, and the aftertaste of almond on your tongue. You watch a pair of children, cheeks sticky with honey, daring each other to dip crusts of stale bread in their mother's almond milk. The winner gets the biggest piece. The loser, just as happy, with a face smeared in a story to tell. A monk slips by, cup in hand, eyes darting. The vendor catches your gaze and shrugs. They always come for seconds, Lent or not. He pours himself a cup, clinks it against yours, and winks. "To saffron dreams," he says, and drinks. You do the same. You finish your cup, feeling strangely light, almost buoyant, as if a little piece of far-off sunshine has lodged itself just behind your ribs. The city is still churning, the market's noise now a velvet hum in the distance, and you feel ready for whatever comes next. A new flavor, a new adventure, maybe even a new friend. You set down your cup, golden stains on your fingertips, and take a breath. The day feels sweeter, the world softer, and your heart just a little warmer for the taste of almonds and the promise of dreams. You drift along, the faint glow of saffron still curling in your memory, and soon the street grows rougher beneath your feet, cobblestones giving way to muddy patches, laughter changing from the polite snickers of merchants to the hoots and howls of people with nothing left to lose and everything to gain from a good bargain. Welcome to the back alleys, where the market gets a little less gilded and a lot more interesting. Here, among tumbled baskets and loudmouth traders, the air smells like raw earth, sweat, and, yes, something crispy, something oddly enticing. You round a corner and there they are, the humble turnip chips. Forget the fancy feasts and noblemen's sugar-glazed almonds.
This is peasant territory where ingenuity is born from necessity and flavor comes with a healthy dose of attitude. The vendor, a wiry woman with hands as brown as the riverbank, stands behind a smoking skillet, wielding a flat wooden paddle with the flair of a tournament champion. Her hair is bundled in a kerchief, her sleeves rolled to her elbows, and her voice carries over the crowd like a battle cry. Hot chips, salty, sharp, and fit for a king who's lost his purse. The turnips themselves are unimpressive, lumpy, with scars that tell stories of hailstorms and hungry goats. But the magic happens in the skillet. Thin slices sizzle in the fat. You don't ask what kind, best not to know. And the smell is wild and earthy, almost peppery. As you approach, you see she's tossing the chips with a little handful of wild herbs. Maybe marjoram, maybe just whatever she picked near the privy this morning. You hold out a coin, and in exchange, she drops a warm handful of chips onto a scrap of parchment so greasy it might ignite from the afternoon sun. You pop the first chip into your mouth and crunch. It's a revelation. Hot, crisp at the edges, with just enough softness in the middle to remind you this is not a potato, but a turnip, bravely impersonating one. The taste is sharp, a little sweet, with a deep earthiness that clings to your teeth and dares you not to grin. Salt hits your tongue like a blessing, followed by the faint ghost of smoke and green. This is the medieval answer to the universal craving for something fried. Potatoes, after all, are still a distant American dream, waiting to cross the Atlantic centuries from now. Here, turnips reign, scorned by the rich but beloved by the clever, who know that a thin slice, a hot fire, and a fearless hand can turn a root into a feast. You watch as children snatch chips and dart away, mouths full and eyes bright, laughing at the city watchmen who grumble but never refuse a taste if offered. A little girl with a gap-toothed grin leans in, eyes on your chips. You break off a piece and hand it to her. She pops it in her mouth, chews, and gives you a solemn nod, the highest honor a peasant child can bestow. Nearby, a pair of old men argue about whose grandmother made the crispiest chips in all Christendom. The vendor rolls her eyes. "My chips are better than any dead woman's," she declares, and the crowd cackles. For all the joking, there's real skill here. The chips are cooked in batches, the vendor swirling them in the skillet, lifting each slice out at just the right moment, neither too pale nor too burnt. She scatters a little salt with a practiced flick, and, if she's in a good mood, a pinch of something spicy that'll make you sneeze and swear eternal loyalty. As you munch, you watch the world pass by. Laborers on break, faces streaked with soot, a cart-pulling donkey chewing enviously, the occasional merchant who sneaks in, cloaked and nervous, craving the forbidden thrill of a peasant treat. Eat too many, the vendor warns, and you'll start digging turnips in your sleep. Someone laughs, someone else mutters about the turnip crop failing last year, and everyone keeps eating. Turnip chips are more than food. They're an act of defiance. They're cheap, fast, and impossible to hoard. They're eaten fresh, with the oil still popping on your lips, and they taste best when shared. The best chips, the vendor tells you with a wink, are made from turnips, grown in moonlight and harvested by cursing at the roots. You suspect this is only half a joke. You lean against a sun-warmed wall, licking salt from your fingers, watching a gang of boys play a game that involves chasing each other with smoldering chip wrappers. There's a sense here of being outside the official world, a place where city rules bend, where people scrape by but still find time to laugh and eat and tease one another. It's loud, messy, alive. Just as you finish your last chip, the vendor shouts, "Last batch for the day!" A fresh rush of customers surges forward. You spot a friar elbowing his way to the front, ready to barter a prayer for a handful. The vendor laughs and tosses him an extra for the good Lord's patience. Even here, miracles come battered and fried. The market bells toll, signaling the hour, but no one is in a hurry. Sunlight slides along the alley walls, casting everything in honeyed gold. For a moment, you simply breathe, full, a little greasy, wonderfully alive. You brush the last crumbs from your palm and step out of the alley. Peasant snack in your belly, smile on your lips, and the memory of salt and earth still bright on your tongue. Onward, the medieval world is full of strange flavors, and you're just getting started. You wander out from the raucous realm of turnip chips, lips tingling with salt, your footsteps now pulling you toward a different kind of commotion, a sweeter, higher-pitched chaos that crackles in the air like distant festival fireworks. Someone is shouting about apples, the words slurred through laughter and punctuated by the clang of a bell, and your curiosity, or perhaps your sweet tooth, tugs you forward, around a heap of straw and toward the square's busiest corner. There, surrounded by a ring of sticky-fingered children and would-be grown-ups pretending they're only here for the little ones, stands the legendary sticky apple cart. Forget those neat modern caramel apples on a stick, lined up like soldiers at a harvest fair. This is medieval improvisation in all its glory. The cart itself is battered and wonky, its wheels threatening to detach at every pothole, and the stall's striped awning droops as if exhausted by centuries of sugar-fueled chaos. Behind it stands a man known as Sweet Tom, whose apron is less a garment and more a record of every batch ever made. His beard glistens with flecks of hardened syrup, and his hands move so fast between the bubbling cauldron and the waiting apples that you suspect he may be part honeybee, part street magician. The air around Tom is impossibly sweet. It's the scent of apples cut fresh from the orchard, sharp, bright, a little grassy, drowned in a storm of boiling sugar, which snaps at your nose and clings to your hair. Somewhere underneath it all, you catch the whisper of burnt caramel, an olfactory warning that Tom's craft is half cooking, half alchemy. His copper pot bubbles and spits over a bed of hot coals, churning a mixture of honey, raw sugar, a whisper of spice, and whatever fruit scraps Tom's managed to charm or steal from nearby stalls. You step up and hand over a copper, more expensive than a turnip chip, but worth every coin if you've got a tooth for risk. And Tom nods, fishing an apple from a crate. He dunks it in the syrup, turning it slow, letting the sticky shell coat every bump and bruise until it glows with an impossible sheen. A flick of his wrist and the apple is speared onto a splintery stick, because naturally, no two sticks are the same, and the best ones come from the hedge behind the churchyard, or so Tom claims. He offers you the apple with a grin. "Careful now," he says. "It's hotter than the devil's dinner plate, and twice as tricky to eat." You take a bite, the shell cracking under your teeth with a sound so satisfying that two children nearby cheer, and a third immediately demands one just like that. The caramel is almost dangerously hot, sweet in a way that feels wild and untamed, clinging to your lips, chin, and, inexplicably, the tip of your nose. The apple beneath is sharp, juicy, so fresh it practically squirts, almost a little sour, balancing the sweetness with a jolt that makes your eyes widen and your heart skip. You chew, giggle, and try to look dignified as a bit of syrup tugs a hair from your brow. Around you, the cart is a microcosm of medieval life. Children jostle for position, each hoping for the biggest apple or the thickest coat of syrup. An old woman buys 3, tucking them away in her basket for the grandkids, though everyone knows at least one will disappear before she gets home. A pair of young lovers, caught in the eternal drama of flirtation and sticky hands, share a bite,
blushing and laughing as they struggle not to glue their faces together. Even the local priest wanders by, pausing just long enough to receive a free sample for the orphans, and one suspects, for himself. Sticky apples are more than a treat. They're an event, a festival in miniature. You watch as Tom juggles requests, dips and turns apples, sprinkles crushed nuts on a few special orders, and tells wild tales of the times he sold his wares at a royal wedding, or survived a near mutiny at a harvest fair when the syrup ran short. His laughter rings out, a little manic, as he shoos away bees and the occasional bold crow. You notice the tricks of the trade. If the weather's cold, the caramel sets in a snap, so Tom works fast, wielding his paddle with the urgency of a ship's captain bailing out a leaky hull. If the sun is fierce, the apples get a dusting of flour, an old market secret to keep the syrup from sliding off in defeat. The syrup itself is a guarded recipe, Tom claims, part honey from the North Fields, part brown sugar from a merchant who may or may not be entirely reputable, a dash of cider for the tang, and a pinch of cinnamon or clove when he's feeling generous. You lick your fingers, which doesn't really help. The syrup simply moves from one place to another, leaving you shiny and a little wild-eyed. A small crowd forms, everyone telling their own apple story. The year the syrup turned to stone in the pot. The summer Tom ran out of sticks and resorted to the city's official quill pens. The mayor was not amused. The winter a passing minstrel sang for his supper and left with 6 apples and a new song about sugar. And then, of course, come the consequences. Your hands are glued together, a streak of caramel runs from your chin to your collar, and somewhere in your hair is a piece of candied apple skin. The local dogs circle hopefully. Children wave their empty sticks in triumph, and Tom wipes his brow, already setting up the next batch. You step back from the cart, heart humming, tongue tingling, the whole world a little brighter and stickier than before. Sunlight slants across the square, glinting off the last perfect drop of syrup on your palm. For a moment, all the city struggles. Its hunger, its mud, its endless noise melt away into a haze of sugar, fruit, and laughter. You take a breath, the taste of apple and honey lingering on your lips, and drift on. By now, your hands are sticky, your belt is a notch looser, and you're beginning to suspect the medieval digestive system was equal parts miracle and disaster. But before you can retreat to some quiet corner and lick your wounds and your fingers, another scent calls to you, thicker, deeper, and smoky enough to make you forget every resolution you've ever made about moderation. You drift toward the source like a moth to a well-greased flame. There, wedged between a basket maker's stall and a shouty fishmonger, sits a battered wooden table draped with a checkered cloth, the domain of Old Hugh and his bacon sandwich stand, a city legend and, rumor has it, the site of more than one minor miracle. You'd think a bacon sandwich would be a simple thing, not here. This is an event, a ceremony worthy of a cathedral, and, if the whispers are true, a spot of healthy blasphemy. The bread is rough, scored with black lines from the fire, still dusted with flour. Hugh stands behind a cast-iron griddle, flipping rashers of bacon with all the reverence of a priest at high mass. The fat sizzles and spits, each crackle a small benediction. The air is so thick with smoke and salt you could close your eyes and believe you're in a chapel dedicated to gluttony. You join the huddle at the front, coin ready. Old Hugh, face hidden behind a wild beard and a smile that might be a grimace, winks as you approach. "One relic, hot and holy," he declares, already splitting a heel of bread and loading it with crisp, curling strips of bacon. He pinches in a few slivers of onion, for the truly daring, and, if you're lucky, a dollop of the house mustard, fiery, coarse, and so potent you suspect it's been banned by the bishop at least twice. The sandwich lands in your palm, hot enough to scorch, wrapped in a rag of linen so permeated with bacon grease it might actually be waterproof. The first bite is a revelation. The bread chewy and smoky, the bacon so salty and rich your mouth waters before you even chew. It's half char, half heaven. The fat melts on your tongue, a rush of salt and umami and the deep, mysterious tang of meat smoked over apple wood. You taste the barest touch of sage and the aftershock of mustard, which hits your nose like a trumpet fanfare and clears your sinuses better than any medieval cure-all. You pause, just for a moment, to honor the bite. This isn't your modern sandwich with factory bacon and supermarket bread. This is survival and celebration, a relic from a time when bacon was both sustenance and status, a precious windfall from pigs slaughtered, salted, and hung in the rafters to wait out the long, hungry winter. Bread, too, is precious, coarse, uneven, alive with flavor, sometimes studded with seeds, sometimes not, always a little bit unpredictable, like the city itself. Hugh hands another sandwich to a young apprentice who bites in and instantly starts to dance, fanning his mouth, face red. "Too much mustard?" Hugh calls, grinning. "A relic is meant to test the soul." Laughter ripples through the crowd. Even the old woman next to you, wrapped in shawls and memories, cracks a smile as she cradles her own sandwich like a newborn. This is the joy of the bacon sandwich. It's an equalizer. The bishop's servant rubs elbows with the baker's boy. Market ladies gossip with traveling tinkers, their mouths full, voices muffled, eyes bright. A merchant in silks faded by too many rainstorms negotiates for an extra rasher and loses his last copper with a mock groan. Even a novice nun, eyes darting, slips a sandwich into her sleeve, cheeks pink with the thrill of forbidden delight. You lick a rivulet of bacon grease from your thumb, sigh, and look around. The world feels different here, closer, kinder. Smoke curls up in blue ribbons, carrying the perfume of pork to the gods, and if Hugh's muttered prayers are to be believed, to a handful of saints with fond memories of their own childhood snacks. Hugh leans close as you take another bite. "Secrets in the brine," he confides, voice low, "cured with bay, pepper, a splash of strong ale, and a bit of hope." You nod, savoring the wisdom. In this city, secrets are as common as cobblestones, and every family has its own method for transforming humble pork into the holy relic of street food. Around you, the ritual continues. Someone tries to haggle, no luck. Someone else tries to pay with a song, and Hugh lets it slide, provided the tune is bawdy enough. A stray dog lingers, eyes pleading, tail thumping the earth in time to the market bell. Children clamor for scraps, and Hugh tosses them ends of bread so saturated with bacon they'll be sticky for days. There's a hum, a joy, an understanding that for just a moment everyone is part of the same miracle. And the sandwich? It disappears too quickly. Grease soaking the linen, a crunch of crust, a final bite of bacon that lingers long after you swallow. Your lips tingle with salt, your fingers shine, and your heart is oddly light. There's a hush as you set the last scrap aside, the city's noise swelling back, brighter and softer, as if every bell and shout is echoing the gospel according to old Hugh. Eat well, laugh loud, and never skimp on the mustard. You step away, lips tingling, heart happy, the taste of smoke and salt a memory you'll carry into the next adventure. The city has shifted again, as cities do when the seasons change and the sun surrenders early. Gone are the wide, golden afternoons of market chaos. Now winter presses its cold thumb into every alley and rattles the doors of the poor with a wind sharp as broken glass. The fog rolls in before supper, soft and thick, swirling under the lamps and blurring the crooked rooftops into ghostly silhouettes. If you squint, you could believe yourself adrift in a dream or the opening scene of an old legend, one with more shivering than swordplay. Your stomach, heroic in its persistence, rallies for another treat. The crowds have thinned, hoods are up, and footsteps sound muffled on the wet stones. You catch a whiff of smoke, rich and sweet, curling like a promise through the mist. Follow it. Your reward, the roasted chestnut vendor, an island of warmth and light in the gray. His brazier glows like a beacon, sparks dancing up and vanishing in the gloom. The man himself is bundled in so many layers he might as well be a walking haystack, but his eyes twinkle, and his hands, red, nimble, almost comically large, work the pan with the devotion of a poet rewriting his favorite line. You shuffle closer, breath hanging in the air, and thrust your hands toward the warmth. For a coin, and perhaps a joke, what's the difference between a monk and a chestnut? Only one gets roasted twice a day. You're handed a twist of brown paper filled with chestnuts so hot you have to juggle them from palm to palm. The shells are dark, split just enough to reveal the soft golden treasure inside, and they smell like something halfway between bread and rain-soaked earth. You crack one open. The steam escapes in a tiny sigh, and you pop the nut into your mouth. It's sweet, starchy, with a richness that lingers, nutty, and almost creamy. The sort of taste that makes you think of harvests and wood smoke and songs sung in kitchens long after the last child should be asleep. Around you, others are doing the same. A shoemaker sharing a paper cone with his apprentice, an old woman hoarding hers in mittened fists, even a pair of guards off duty, their helmets slung low as they chase warmth instead of trouble. The city fades to a gentle hush. Bells toll somewhere distant, soft as lullabies. The chestnut vendor keeps up a running commentary, part poetry, part local news. Bad batch last week, but these are fat from the Bishop's Grove, he brags, and everyone laughs. You nod, because even if it's a lie, it's a comforting one, and in winter, comfort is its own kind of truth. Chestnuts have their own small rituals. You fumble a shell, drop it, chase it down before a stray dog does. The meat inside is pale, crumbly, sometimes a little scorched, which, the vendor insists, is extra flavor, just like my wife's cooking. The best chestnuts break in half perfectly, the two sides steaming like split loaves. The worst, well, let's just say you haven't truly tasted medieval street food until you've nibbled your way through a batch of slightly underdone, slightly smoky chestnuts while the city's chill tries to bite through your bones. For a moment, the world narrows to the circle of firelight, the pop and hiss of nuts in the brazier, the hush of fog settling on your shoulders. You hear a fiddler somewhere, the notes drawn out slow and sweet as molasses. Nearby, two children play at being merchants, trading chestnut shells for pebbles, giggling when one sells the same shell twice. A friar strolls by, hands cupped around his cone, muttering a prayer you suspect is mostly for warmth. Chestnuts are a humble luxury, a taste of the forest, a promise that winter won't last forever. Unlike the sticky apples or the pasties with their parade of spices, these are quiet, honest, and ancient. Romans ate them, you remember, and so did monks in their silent refectories. Monks who may have argued about the best way to peel a hot nut without cursing in Latin. Here, on a corner shrouded in fog, you become part of that tradition. One chestnut, one story, one warming breath at a time. You finish your handful, licking the salt from your lips, feeling your fingers again as the heat seeps in. The vendor nods, passing you a few extra for luck.
Or maybe because you laughed at his joke. The city's edge feels softer, the fog gentler, the cold less insistent. This is winter's secret, not to banish the chill, but to outlast it, one hot chestnut at a time. As you walk on, the city reclaims its secrets. The glow of the brazier fades, but the memory lingers. Smoke in your hair, warmth in your hands, and the sweet, ancient taste of roasted chestnut on your tongue. A hush, a breath. The fog rolls on, and so do you. You'd think that after roasted chestnuts, the world would go quiet for a while. That winter would press everyone into submission. But you'd be wrong. This is a medieval city, after all, and hunger is more creative than any decree. No sooner has your last chestnut cooled than you catch the scent of something forbidden, or at least officially discouraged. The unmistakable perfume of something frying, crisping, beckoning even the most devout to loosen their belts in their vows. You know what time it is? The season of fasts, when the church bells toll with extra insistence and the priest's sermons get longer and more suspiciously specific about gluttony. No meat, no dairy, no pleasure, the law says. No problem, the cooks reply, grinning. For where there are rules, there are loopholes, and where there are loopholes, there are fritters. You follow the trail, literally, because it's hard to miss the tiny golden crumbs that sprinkle the path like edible breadcrumbs. The frying is done in a narrow alley, hidden between a cooper's shop and a boarded-up well. Smoke rises, blue and fragrant, from a shallow iron pan set over a heap of glowing embers. The woman manning the pan, her cheeks round, her kerchief askew, and her grin pure mischief, does not look like someone cowed by church rules. Her name is Mother Isolde, patron saint of local loopholes. She waves you over. Fasting? She asks, eyes twinkling. Then you're in luck. Today's special, apple and onion, no sin included, unless you count joy. She hands you a piece, still sizzling, its edges lacy and golden brown. Your fingers barely register the heat before your mouth demands action. You bite in. There's the delicate crunch of the fried batter, the sweet tart tang of apple melted into the heart, and then, somehow, a savory ghost of onion that lingers just long enough to make you wonder what else is hiding inside. The outside is crisp, almost shattering. The inside is tender, hot, almost creamy. You have no idea whether this counts as a dessert, a meal, or an act of rebellion. Perhaps it's all three. Around you, a congregation is gathering. Children with sticky hands, a pair of widows cackling over some joke about the bishop's waistline, a pair of musicians whose lute and tabor are momentarily forgotten in the face of hot food. Isolde keeps the pan moving, flipping fritters, dusting a few with the faintest shower of honey or a shake of something sharp, cider vinegar maybe, or a spice from a merchant who'd rather not discuss import duties. Every so often someone asks, "Are these allowed?" And Isolde shrugs. If it's fried, it's forgiven. Fasting fritters are the loophole everyone knows about. When the decree came down, no meat, no cheese, no butter, clever hands switched to oil, apples, leeks, even slivers of dried fish if you wanted to push your luck. Anything, really, that could be chopped, battered, and dropped in hot fat. The friars look away, the priests mutter about intent, and everyone else just eats faster. You pop another bite, this one with a fleck of wild parsley, and sigh with something close to bliss. There's a rhythm to the alley now, the bubbling of the oil and the sizzle as batter hits the pan, the chorus of hungry voices bargaining for just one more. Every so often the church bell tolls, but nobody flinches. Here, beneath the pan's hiss and Isolde's laughter, you're in a world where rules soften and winter's grip loosens, just for a moment. An apprentice, face dusted with flour, dares a friend to eat a fritter whole, hot as coals. He does, hops from foot to foot,
then beams in triumph. A noblewoman, eyes hidden under her hood, orders a paper cone full. For the servants, she says. Sure. Everyone winks. Even the alley cats linger, hopeful, their tails curling with every sizzle. Isolda, ever generous, offers up variations for those with special needs. Fritters stuffed with herbs for the herbivores, extra onions for those who fancy themselves strong of stomach, a batch sprinkled with cinnamon for a rare sweet twist. Fasting doesn't mean flavorless, she declares, to much applause. She tells the story of a bishop who once wandered through incognito to check for heresy, and ended up leaving with his robe full of fritters and his conscience conveniently silent. You finish your last piece, lips glistening with oil, hands warm and fragrant. There's a sense of camaraderie here, a gentle defiance, a feeling that hunger makes family of strangers and turns every bite into a small act of survival. Outside the alley, the city resumes its fast. Here, the fast is something to be danced around, laughed at, and, above all, enjoyed, one golden bite at a time, at a hush, a breath. The sizzle dies down for a moment as Isolda refills the pan, and you linger in the warm haze, knowing you'll remember this flavor and the mischief behind it, long after Lent has faded from the calendar. You slip out of the fragrant golden alley, mind still spinning with fritters and loopholes, and the city's chill finds you once again. This time, the wind carries something sharper, brinnier, the kind of scent that cuts through both hunger and conversation like a blade. You know this one. Salt and vinegar, fish and fire, the perfume of preservation. Ahead, the herring vendors are out, voices ringing with the enthusiasm of people who know their wares will linger on the palate and on the breath, long after the last bell has tolled. The pickled herring cart is a battered old affair, the wood swollen with the memory of 1,000 rainy mornings. A faded sign dangles overhead depicting a herring so plump and silvery it could be a saint in disguise, or a warning. The woman behind the cart, big-boned and wrapped in shawls, has hands so red from brine you wonder if she ever dries them. She brandishes a knife with the casual menace of someone who could debone a fish in the dark, and probably has. Next to her, a mountain of onions sits, sliced thin, so pungent that even the crows keep a respectful distance. You draw near, eyes watering a little. She lifts a pot lid with a flourish, and the scent blooms, vinegar and spice, bay leaf and peppercorn, that deep, unmistakable tang of fish that spent a week marinating in hope and necessity. She grins, revealing teeth that have seen both better days and better herring. You look like you need a bite of courage, she says, spearing a glistening chunk and dropping it onto a slab of black bread, and a touch of onion for flavor and for keeping friends at a distance. You take the offering. The bread is rough, more shield than sponge, its edges stained by the fish's juices. The herring is cold, firm, and slippery, glistening with the sheen of vinegar, the flesh pink and silver, each piece trembling just a little as if it knows what's coming. The onions are raw, sharp, and sliced so thin they curl like ribbons. You open wide and bite. The effect is immediate and glorious. A rush of salt and acid, the herring's fat balanced by the sting of the vinegar and the crunch of bread. The onion explodes, pungent, eye-watering, cleansing your sinuses with a ferocity that would make any medieval barber jealous. For a moment, the world shrinks to that mouthful, the texture of fish yielding to your teeth, the grain of bread rough against your tongue, the heat of the onion blooming up into your nose. You cough, you blink, and then you go in for another bite. Around the cart, the scene is a social dance. No one here is shy. Herring eaters are a breed apart, dock workers on their break, A gaggle of boys daring each other to eat the biggest onion slice. An old couple who eat side by side without a word, united in the kind of affection that only comes from sharing strong flavors and stronger opinions. Even the city watch stops by, not for the taste. Heaven knows some never acquire it, but for the sheer bracing power of herring and onion on a cold afternoon. The vendor tells tales as she works, her knife never still. "Did you hear of old Bishop Fenwick?" she calls to the crowd. "Ate 6 herrings at Lent, then tried to preach about moderation. His wife locked him in the cellar till his breath improved." Laughter explodes, as robust and stinging as the onions themselves. She winks at you, topping your next piece with an extra curl of onion. "That'll clear out any evil spirits you've picked up wandering these streets, or at least scare away the neighbors." You finish your first slab, already feeling the warmth of vinegar creeping into your blood. Your nose tingles. Your lips are alive. The herring is rich, so much more than mere fish. This is a relic of survival, of rivers and seas that sometimes give more than they take, of winters when salt and vinegar mean the difference between feast and famine. The onions, well, they're the price of admission, and you pay gladly, savoring the way they force your eyes to water, your cheeks to glow, your lungs to fill with something that feels, against all odds, like courage. Every now and then a more refined customer, maybe a minor noble or a merchant's wife in borrowed velvet, will drift past, nostrils wrinkling, only to circle back later, pulled in by memory or a craving that refuses to be polite. Even the children get in on it, stealing slivers of onion and daring each other to breathe on the priest at evening prayers. Pickled herring is the food of the practical, the brave, and the unself-conscious. No one eats it before a romantic rendezvous. But on days like this, when the wind bites and the clouds squat low and heavy, there's a peculiar joy in biting back, with salt, with vinegar, with onions that can fell a moose at 20 paces. You find yourself grinning, your breath now an instrument of both defense and defiance. As you wipe your mouth with the sleeve and nod your thanks, the vendor slips you a final tiny herring tail. "For luck," she says, her eyes glinting. "Or for your enemies, if you've any left." You laugh, a sound as bright and sharp as the food itself. You step away from the cart, the taste of river and earth and fire lingering on your tongue. Your eyes sting, your blood buzzes, and somewhere, despite the cold, the mud, the endless haggling of the market, you feel more awake, more alive than you have all day. A hush, a pause, the world sharp-edged and singing with salt and vinegar. You step away from the herring cart, lips tingling and eyes watering, breath strong enough to make the city cats scatter in your wake. You round the corner, thinking you might be ready for a quieter moment, maybe a snack less likely to clear out your sinuses or compromise your social standing. But the city has other plans. The market square has erupted. Half street fair, half circus, half accidental brawl. Yes, that's 3 halves, but math is flexible when everyone's pushing, shouting, and trying not to get trampled by a runaway goose. There, in the thick of the chaos, sits a tiny stall with a faded red canopy, nearly lost in the swirl of elbows and laughter, the gingerbread table. If you're picturing soft, cakey holiday cookies dusted with sugar, think again. Medieval gingerbread is an altogether different beast. Equal parts alchemy, art, and arm wrestling match. It's dense, spiced, honey-soaked, and cut into odd shapes. Birds, leaves, hearts, sometimes tiny knights with no faces left after a day in the sun. The woman behind the table, Mistress Edith, is as much a force of nature as the food she sells. Her hair is a riot of curls, her cheeks flushed, and her fingers dusted with what might be cinnamon or might be dirt. Who's checking? "Spice for the soul, sweets for saints and sinners," she bellows over the din, waving a slab of gingerbread high above her head. Her voice slices through the riot, and suddenly you find yourself in the thick of a scrum, half the city jostling for a taste, the other half shouting for order, or in one case, for someone to return a stolen chicken. A boy ducks under a table, clutching a chunk in each fist, while a trio of old women argue about whether nutmeg brings good luck or just trouble. You press forward, trading a coin for a piece so heavy you almost drop it. It's warm in your palm, sticky at the edges, the color of old leather, and stamped with the faint impression of a lion. Edith's signature touch. You lift it to your nose. Honey, spice, a hint of pepper, and the unmistakable fire of ginger. Still a rare treasure, brought across oceans by men with stories longer than the road to Rome. You bite in. The gingerbread resists, then yields, a satisfying chew, sticky enough to tug at your teeth, spiced enough to make you blink. First comes honey, dark and intense, then a slow burn of ginger and clove, a chorus of cinnamon, and maybe, just maybe, a dangerous whisper of black pepper. You're not entirely sure you're eating dessert or medicine, but in this riot, that's half the fun. All around you, the market spins. A juggler nearly loses his pins to a pie-flinging peddler. A minstrel serenades a woman who's clearly more interested in the gingerbread than the song, and Mistress Edith keeps up a running commentary that borders on stand-up comedy. Try the gingerbread, love. It'll put hair on your chest, or at least on your chin, she cackles, handing a slab to a bashful apprentice whose chin is, in fact, in need of both. A sudden commotion breaks out near the stall. A pair of young men arguing over the last heart-shaped piece, their voices rising, their friends egging them on. Edith, cool as a cucumber, smacks the table and shouts, "Share it or I'll eat it myself." Order is restored, not by force, but by the unspoken law of the gingerbread line. Respect the treat, or risk Edith's wrath. Gingerbread in the medieval city is more than a sweet. It's a sign of fortune. Spices cost dearly, but honey is everywhere, and every feast, fair, and wedding boasts its own recipe. Some are soaked in wine, others in cider. A few are gilded with gold leaf for those who want to eat their status. Edith's recipe is handed down from her grandmother, who, legend has it, once distracted a mob with a single batch during the last great butter shortage. The key, she says, is not just the spice, but the story. She hands out scraps to street urchins, slips a few coins into the cup of a blind beggar, and threatens to throw a piece at the mayor if he keeps trying to cut in line. You savor your second bite, a smile creeping up despite yourself. The ginger's heat is just right, the sweetness clings, and for a moment the chaos fades. Someone starts a song, a rough round about a knight, a cow, and a wedding gone wrong, and Edith joins in, voice loud and off-key. The crowd sways, hands clapping, and for a second the riot becomes a party. A dog leaps onto the table, snatches a corner of gingerbread, and darts away, trailing a line of giggling children. Edith throws back her head and laughs, tossing crumbs in their wake. "Saints save us all!" she roars, and everyone cheers. You linger, licking sticky honey from your fingers, the taste of spice warming your blood, even as the evening chill sets in. The market's noise swells, then settles. The riot drifts on, leaving a trail of crumbs and laughter in its wake. A hush, a breath. You tuck the last piece of gingerbread into your pouch, the memory of chaos and honey lingering, ready to sweeten whatever comes next. You break away from the gingerbread fray. the taste of honey and fire still humming on your tongue, and slip into a quieter street where the chaos of the market is just a distant thrum, half memory, half lullaby. Here, the world softens. The cobblestones are worn smooth by slippers and secrets. The windows glow golden against the creeping dusk, and the air smells warm and strangely familiar, like childhood and half-forgotten comfort. If you listen closely, you can hear the faint scrape of a spoon in a pot, the gentle hush of someone singing, off-key, but with feeling. You follow the scent. It draws you past a half-shuttered bakery and a row of laundry strung like pennants overhead, fluttering in the evening breeze, until you come to a squat stone tavern with a crooked sign and a door so low you have to duck. Inside, the air is thick with the scent of sweet milk, toasted oats, and the quiet conspiracies of people who know that sometimes the best meals are the ones you eat when nobody's looking. Welcome to the world of milky porridge for sinners, the dish everyone claims to outgrow but secretly craves. The innkeeper, Mistress Belda, is a formidable woman with arms like loaves and an apron stiff with years of honest spills. She greets you with a nod, gestures you to a bench by the hearth, and produces a steaming bowl with all the gravity of a sacred relic. Careful, love, she warns, hotter than the bishop's sermons, and nearly as filling. You cradle the bowl, letting the steam curl up into your face. The porridge is thick and creamy, with a pale golden glow where melted butter swirls across the surface. There's a dusting of brown sugar, or maybe ground nuts on top, and every so often you catch the glimmer of a raisin, small treasures hidden for the lucky or the patient. You dip your spoon in, feeling the heft of oats cooked slow in milk, stirred and stirred again until they surrender all resistance and turn soft as a lullaby. The first bite is bliss, warm, velvety, faintly sweet, with a hint of something toasted that lingers on the roof of your mouth. The milk is rich. Cow, goat, who knows? And the oats are plump, each spoonful slipping down with the kind of quiet satisfaction that makes you wonder why you ever bothered with meat pies or honeyed cakes. It's a meal for the soul as much as the stomach, and you can see why it's both beloved and, in some circles, frowned upon. For here's the secret. In the medieval world, milky porridge was often the food of the penitent, the poor, or those who found themselves on the wrong side of a fast. No meat, no feast, just a simple bowl of oats and milk, humble, honest, and, if you ask the right people, secretly decadent. The church might insist it's a dish for sinners, a penance for gluttony, or some minor misdeed. Stolen a turnip, have you? Here, eat your gruel and reflect on your life. But in truth, the taverns and kitchens of the city know better. They add a splash of cream, a pinch of spice, a spoonful of honey filched from the larder, and suddenly this meal of penance becomes a guilty pleasure. Around you, the tavern is a haven of comfort and quiet laughter. A friar, eyes bright with mischief, scrapes the last bit of porridge from his bowl, licking his spoon with the fervor of a saint denied his supper. Two washerwomen swap stories and raisins, making bets on whose bowl is the creamiest. Even the city's night watch, off-duty and out of uniform, tucks into their bowls with the focus of men who know they're safer inside than out. Belda herself keeps a careful watch, refilling bowls, offering a slice of bread for soaking, and doling out advice with the same steady hand she uses to stir her pots. It's not just food, she tells you, it's comfort. And everyone needs a bit of comfort, even the bishop, especially the bishop, though don't tell him I said so. She winks, slides a bowl to a young apprentice still shivering from his errands in the evening rain, and slips him an extra pat of butter for good luck. Milky porridge isn't just a food, it's a ritual. Children fall asleep to the sound of it bubbling in the pot. Lovers share secret bowls in shadowed corners. Old men stir theirs with trembling hands, eyes soft with memories. It's a dish for the hungry and the hopeful, the weary and the wicked, a reminder that sometimes the simplest pleasures are the sweetest. You savor the last spoonful, feeling the warmth settle deep in your bones. The world outside is darker now, the market just a distant echo. The cold kept at bay by oats and milk and the gentle glow of shared humanity. The other patrons begin to drift out, some to work, some to home, some to whatever mischief the city offers after dark. You linger, watching the fire die down, grateful for this moment of peace, this bowl of comfort, this tiny rebellion against the world's sharp edges. You set your spoon down, the bowl scraped clean, and take a long, slow breath. In the hush that follows, you understand. This is what it means to be full, not just of food, but of stories, kindness, and the knowledge that somewhere, in some small tavern or kitchen, there is always a place for sinners and saints alike. You step out from the warm hush of the tavern, belly soothed by porridge, heart quietly glowing. The night is folding itself around the city now, shadows spilling across the lanes, lanterns flickering in doorways, and laughter rising from corners where secrets seem to gather like fallen leaves. But it isn't only whispers drifting on the chill. There's something else, a soft, rich scent on the air, warm and nutty, a promise of sweetness, sharp enough to cut through even the thickest fog of confession. You follow your nose down the narrow, winding street, past a trio of tipsy students singing psalms much too cheerily for anyone's piety, and there, beneath a low stone archway, you find the source. A little stall aglow with lantern light, the kind that paints everything in gold and shadow. The air here is alive with the crackle of sugar and the low hum of voices, eager for both treats and tales. Welcome to the realm of candied almonds and spilled secrets, where no one leaves empty-handed, and even the most guarded stories slip free between bites. The vendor is a sly, bird-like woman named Marga, famed for knowing everyone's business and sharing just enough of it to make her almonds taste twice as good. Her copper pot bubbles over a small fire, its surface glossy with melting honey, and a heap of almonds tumbled in like coins tossed for luck. She stirs with a long wooden spoon, her eyes sharp, her smile quick. "Almonds for your troubles?" she trills. "2 coins a scoop. 3 coins if you want one rolled in cinnamon and a story to go with it." You nod, pressing a coin into her palm, one that still smells faintly of bacon grease and adventure, and she tips a scoopful of glossy golden almonds onto a square of parchment. The scent is heady, sugar toasted nearly to the edge of burning, almonds rich and warm, a hint of spice lurking underneath like the secret heart of a love letter. You pick one up, still hot, and roll it between your fingers before daring a bite. The shell cracks beneath your teeth, brittle and thin, and gives way to the buttery snap of the almond within. There's a rush of sweetness, but not the cloying sort. This is sugar tempered by fire, caramelized to something smoky and almost grown up, with just a brush of cinnamon or pepper to wake you up. The nut itself is earthy, full of sunshine and rain and whatever hopes a medieval orchard can muster. For a second, the world pauses on your tongue. All around, the little crowd jostles for space, coins flashing, stories bubbling over. A young maid whispers to her friend, and both giggle, eyes darting over the shoulders of passing clerics. 2 apprentices trade almonds for rumors, who's run off with the fishmonger's daughter, who got caught pilfering apples, who's already spent his week's wages on sweetmeats and dice. Marga smiles, listening with the skill of a master spy, and every so often adds a few extra candied almonds for truthfulness, or more likely, for a secret well worth the sugar. There's something about candied almonds that inspires confessions. Maybe it's the crunch, the comfort, the way the sugar lingers and softens the edge of even the sharpest gossip. Maybe it's just that here, where the world feels safely tucked away from the prying eyes of the day, people can afford to be a little reckless, a little vulnerable, a little sweeter themselves. You lean against the wall, parchment in hand, and let yourself drift. You overhear a merchant bragging about his new shipment of saffron, his voice as bright as the almonds in Marga's pot. An old soldier, shoulders stooped by memory, swaps a story for a handful of nuts, his tale half true and wholly entertaining. Even the city guard stops by, just to keep the peace. But you see the twinkle in his eye as he pockets a few treats for his sweetheart, or maybe for himself. Marga, for her part, knows how to listen as well as she stirs. She slips you a candied almond rolled in cinnamon and nods toward the corner, where two figures are arguing in low, urgent voices. Best not to cross them tonight, she murmurs, but do remember the tune of their quarrel. These nights, secrets travel faster than plague. She grins, gives the pot another stir, and hums a tune older than the city itself. You savor another almond, the shell crackling and the nut warm, and feel something loosen in your chest, a story you might tell or keep, or maybe just let dissolve with the sugar on your tongue. For every almond, it seems, another secret drifts out into the night, to be carried home in someone's sleeve, or forgotten in the swirl of market lights. A boy with sticky hands scurries past, almonds clutched in his fist, face shining with the innocence of someone who hasn't learned how heavy secrets can be. An old woman with no teeth gums hers happily, nodding at the stars. Even the stray cat licks sugar from the cobblestones, hoping for one more lost treat. In the end, that's the true magic of candied almonds, how they turn strangers into friends, stories into laughter, burdens into something lighter and easier to bear. You eat your last almond slow, savoring the crunch, the warmth, the sense that you are, for this brief moment, exactly where you're meant to be. The lanterns flicker, the secrets drift. The almonds are gone, but the taste lingers, sweet and sharp, a promise that the night's not over yet. A hush, a breath, and one last secret shared with the stars. The city has grown quieter, the crowds faded to murmurs and the bells hushed, as if even the cathedral towers have surrendered to the spell of midnight. You feel the weight of the night settle on your shoulders, softer than a cloak, heavier than regret, while the narrow lanes fill with shadows and secrets. Lanterns gutter in their brackets. The laughter from the alehouse thins to the occasional bark. Here and there, a shutter creaks, then snaps shut as someone decides they've had enough of both the day's business and its temptations. But you are still wandering, stomach and curiosity twinned, drawn onward by one last scent, darker, earthier, a sort of savory perfume that hints at mystery and risk. It's the aroma of something roasting slowly, laboriously, behind closed doors, the kind of snack best shared with only the bravest and the boldest, or those who have nothing left to lose. Welcome to the final stop on tonight's tour, Midnight Pigeon Pie. You trace the scent to a hidden cook shop, half tucked under a stone arch, its sign swinging softly in the breeze, an image of a bird mid-flight, all feathers and hope. Inside, the glow of a single lantern glimmers on the faces of a handful of true night owls, a tired carter, two giggling washerwomen, a student cramming for a test that may or may not exist, and the pie maker herself, Old Maud, wrapped in wool, hands dusted with flour, and eyes like a fox who's seen every trick in the city twice. Maud gives you a nod, the kind that says, hurry in before the shutters drop, and don't ask questions you don't want answered. Her counter is nearly bare but for a cluster of golden brown pies, their crusts fat and slightly lopsided, the air around them humming with the warmth of herbs and roasted meat. You hand her your last coin. There's always one coin left for the final snack. And she presses a pie into your palm, its heat seeping straight to your bones. You settle into the corner, pie in hand, candle flickering, and dig in. The crust shatters beneath your fingers, rough, buttery, savory, the sort of pastry that's both armor and invitation. The filling is dense, rich, undeniably bird, but not quite chicken or duck. Pigeon, you realize, and you're surprised by how it tastes. A little wild, deeply meaty, sweet with onions, shot through with pepper, a hint of rosemary, and just enough lard to make your doctor wake up in a cold sweat. There are little nuggets of carrot, a surprise of bacon if you're lucky, and an occasional olive or currant. Maud likes to keep things interesting, and she's not above slipping in whatever's left from the day's other pies. Each bite is a kind of riddle, the sort that medieval cooks loved best. How do you turn scraps and the most ordinary bird in the city into something that tastes like a king's secret supper? The answer apparently is midnight, patience, and a willingness to use every trick the old city has taught you. You look around. The carter sighs into his pie as if it's the first real comfort he's had all week. The washerwomen whisper and giggle, breaking off bites and sharing in that way only the truest friends or the hungriest conspirators can manage. The student picks the crust methodically, pausing now and then to scrawl a line of notes in the margin of a borrowed book. Maud wipes her hands, pours herself a cup of ale, and surveys her little kingdom, eyes soft with satisfaction. Outside, the city feels changed. The usual night watch trudge past, noses high as they pretend not to envy the glow spilling from Maud's door. Cats prowl along the walls, silent and expectant. Somewhere, a bell rings, low and uncertain, as if even it's lost track of the hour. Midnight pigeon pie is not a luxury, it's an act of survival, invention, and stubborn delight. It's what you eat when the party's over, the day's done, and only the hungriest or the most hopeful remain awake. The pigeons themselves, those plump city dwellers, are as much a part of the medieval landscape as gossip and cobblestones. They're humble, ignored until they're needed, then transformed, like everything worth loving in this world, by salt, heat, and a clever hand. You savor the last bite, the crust flaking, the herbs singing on your tongue. Your belly is full, your eyes are heavy, and the city's midnight heart beats slow and deep around you. For a moment it feels as if the pie, the cook shop, and everyone inside are tucked into the folds of history, a secret feast hidden from time, a memory you'll taste again whenever you close your eyes. As you stand to go, Maud gives you a nod of approval, and you nod back, crumbs on your chin, warmth blooming in your chest. The final crust in hand, you step into the night, the city's hush wrapping you like a blanket. Your footsteps softer, slower, lighter. A hush, a breath, a final taste of midnight.